Providence Lane Homestead here in Alberta, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a wool ball. It's really simple. You just need your hands, some wool, and some hot water and soap. Stay tuned. So today we're going to be using roving. This is a piece that was processed at Dragonfly Fiber Mills in Stettler, Alberta. This is from our Longwool Cotswold Girl Lavender. It has been washed and then put through the cards and then drafted into this roving shape. It's basically a long strip and it comes on a larger roll like this. We're going to turn this into this is the raw material we're going to use to turn into our ball. You can do this with yarn and you can do this with bats, but we are going to use roving today. The next thing you're going to do is fill your sink here with water as hot as you can stand. You're going to be putting your hands in it, so you don't want it to be too hot, but our water gets particularly warm, so I will generally fill the sink with hot water and then give it 30 seconds just to kind of come down a little bit so that it's comfortable for my hands. You do need the heat, you do need it to be hot, but don't burn yourself. Use common sense. So in this sink we have really hot water. On the sink beside it here, I'm filling it with the opposite. I'm filling it with cold water. You don't need a ton of water in either, and one of this is about to my knuckle here. It's about to my knuckle deep, but what is that, 2 inches? All you need is that make sure your sink is clean. That's important. And if you're going to do this with little people, again, pay attention to your water temperature, but also it's always a good idea to have them up higher than the level of the water. Otherwise, the water tends to run down elbows and make nice little puddles on the floor. So just something to keep in mind as you're working forward. Take your yarn ball that you've made. Again, this is 1.3 ounces, and you're going to put it in the hot water. Immerse it fully. Now, because we're using roving, I find this actually a little more challenging than the bats, but because we're using roving, we're going to pay a little bit of extra attention because the water and the yarn and the wool kind of can drift into each other. So I use a little extra soap than I might use because it acts as a lubricant. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start smoothing that soap. Turn off the cold water, smoothing that soap into the ball. And you'll see that some of the roving is drifting. It's okay, we're going to deal with that, not to worry. We're just going to start smoothing it around, getting the roving really well saturated with the soap. It's going to act as a lubricant, and then we're just going to use our hands like this, turning the ball, what will become a ball, around in our hands, the soap acting as a lubricant. You can see I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this. I'm just rotating it around, moving it around. And you can still see here, so you can still see some of the roving. That's okay. In time that will go away. By the time we get to our finished ball, that won't even be noticeable. Put it back in the hot water, give it a little spin, back onto the hand motion. Make sure that you turn the ball sufficiently. You want to cover all parts of the ball. You can do every kind of motion. Be gentle. You don't need to use a lot of pressure. You don't need to be a lot of muscle in this. You can see the roving, sometimes it comes off a little bit. That's okay. We'll just smooth it back on. No problem. I do find bats a little bit easier to use than the roving, but the roving does fine. And we just keep turning, keep smoothing, keep moving the ball back into the hot water. Maybe give it a little squeeze and back to the rotation. You're going to do this for a little while, 2 or 3 minutes, I would say. So sometimes you're going to find especially when you do this with rovings, that you get some ropey bits like this that don't want to go in so easily. What I suggest you do is just take your needle felting needle and give it some gentle jabs. Just tucking it back in, making it want to stick a little bit. This part probably isn't necessary. I just don't have the patience to manually do it all by hand. So I'll just stuff it in here. Gentle jabs, get that bit of rope stuck into the ball, make it want to stick there. Watch your fingers. and then back into the hot water. That's our first one done. This one's been jabbed a couple of times just to get the roving to stick, but as you can see, it's a fairly uniform ball. I'm pretty happy with that, and we'll move on to the next one. You may find that you have to fill your sink a couple of times just to keep the heat of your hot water. The hot water is very important. I like to move it between the hot and the cold, the hot and the cold. It just helps to promote felting with the wool. So now we have the balls finished, and as you can see, there's still very evident, a lot of evidence of the rovings that are there. You can see the lines through here. I've also been using my needle to stuff in little corners and little pieces. You can see that it looks quite hairy. There's quite a halo around it. Don't worry about that. That's totally normal, completely okay. And it's not necessary to make them bone dry, like squeeze out all the water. I almost never do, and they still do just fine. We're going to do the next part of the felting process. This is going to make things a little bit easier on your hands if you've got any arthritis. And just so you know, this works with more than just wool. I've done this with alpaca as well. Just measure out your balls. The tighter that you can wind the initial ball when it's still dry, the easier the felting process is going to be. You're not going to have stuff shifting around quite as much. So we're going to take these downstairs, pop them into the dryer on a regular heat cycle for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then I'll show you what we have. Welcome to my laundry room. I feel like this should come with an apology. But we're going to just pop these in the dryer now, and I'll show you about 30 minutes later what we've got. We're back in the laundry room, and we're going to see what we've got for the wool balls. Oh, nice! There you go. As you see, the halo is quite a bit smaller now, and any lines that we had are mostly gone. That's a little bit of VM that managed to get through the process. This ball is still kind of damp to the touch, but that's okay. It's going to sit for a couple of days and it'll be nice and dry. There you go.